Hey, how you doing? In today's market, money is tight. You know, we can't all really afford to spend $2,000 on a gaming PC. But, let's say it were $10. Would that change it up? Well, that was the goal of today's video, to see what was the cheapest PC that we could possibly make. Let me show you our specs. Obviously, it is an older system, made in 2009, but it still works well. We have 4 sticks, each 2 GB of DDR3 memory. We have a Phenom 840T and a Radeon 74070. Now, the CPU and the RAM is both from 2009, but our graphics card is a little bit newer, coming out in 2011 or 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Now, how does this computer work? Honestly, I was expecting it to be slow and not really useful whatsoever. But surprisingly, it actually worked amazing. Now, it boots up fast due to the fact that I have an SSD in there, but we can get to that later. But what we're really all wanting to see is, since it is a gaming computer, how does it game? Starting off of Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2005, we're going at 1080p. Now, this was a very smooth experience in my opinion. While some of you may not be accustomed to 30 FPS, it really is a nice experience, especially for these older titles. Now, I wish I could have had a much higher frame rate in this situation, since it is such an old game, but unfortunately, the frames are actually capped at 30 FPS, meaning that it cannot go above it, and so it stayed at a solid 30 FPS for the entirety of the benchmark. Honestly, it worked out really good, and I was very happy to see this. Coming into this, I didn't really know how good of a computer could be made, especially for $10. But the $5 desktop showed itself, and then so did the graphics card. Now, our next game we're testing is Paladins. Obviously, as you can see, 768p, and we're getting really good minimums of 35, a maximum of 62, and an average of 50. Now, this game was released in mid-2015, but it is still receiving updates normally and regularly nowadays, meaning that it is still a game of 2023. Now, let me remind you, this is a system with most components from 2009, and it's still getting close to console performance. I think that's incredible. Now, moving on to our next game, let's see what we can do with it. As our next game, we have Modern Warfare 3. One of my favorite titles growing up. I would always play it on the PlayStation. Now, in this game, I was able to run it at native 1080p. Now, we had minimums of 55, maximums of 135, and an average FPS rate of 102. Now, you may notice sometimes in the video, or at least sometimes in the gameplay footage, it's a little choppy. This is due to the fact that all of the footage was recorded without an external card, meaning that the thing was able to actually capture all of the frames, and it was also able to record. That again is just a testament to how good this $10 PC is. I mean, just look at it. It's perfectly smooth and it works phenomenally. Let's move on to our next game. Okay, this is Royale. A little bit older, gained a little popularity back around 2019. So we're running this at 768p, once again, 1366 by 768. It's a very good frame rate, especially for a computer at this price point. Now, we had minimums of 55, maximums of 135, and we had an average of 102 frames per second. I'll be completely honest, I'm not very good at this game, or at least not anymore. But I was still able to have a very fun and smooth experience throughout this entire title. See, whenever you have such a low price point to work with, there's not very much you can do, or at least you believe there isn't. But then you see games such as this, which this game still gets regular updates in 2023, and it's running just fine. With $10, you really can't go wrong. I think that's really the most important part about all of this. Also, while I'm not going to show it in this video, I was actually able to get 4K videos running very smoothly on this. If you want to stream Netflix, YouTube, it's all possible. Heck, some of the editing for this video was actually done on the computer. And so if you do this, just play around with the settings, and I bet you'll have just as much of a fun time as I did. Now, ending and rounding off our benchmarks, we have CSGO. Now, originally I started up the game in 1920 by 1080 at max settings, and as you can imagine, that did not run so well. So after cranking down the settings just a tad bit, I was able to focus on 768p. Now, I was able to maintain an average of 55, a max of 175, and a min of 35, which, in all honesty, is very good, especially for this price point. With how well this machine runs, I would not be surprised if you can get newer titles such as Fortnite and Valorant running just fine on these. Now, while you may have to crank down the settings, I'd say that it would honestly work just fine. Though I will say, if you do have really bad frames, it will definitely impact your performance negatively. So you have to always watch out for that. Now, at the end of the day, should you buy this PC? I think you should. This was a great experience, and I got to learn a lot about the architecture and just all of the stuff around this computer. And it was really a great job and great time. So if you have the chance, I suggest building this. Remember to like, subscribe, and you have a wonderful day.